Chapter 7. Inside Building. There were fish tanks all around the big room, some with lights over them and some with lights in them. The water in them held a ghostly greenish light, and through the greenish light moved fish of every color that you can think of. There were long, thin golden fish, with Japanese whale fish with fantastic tails. There were tiny fish 1 centimeter long and fish that you could see through. There were big black Chinese Moors with great round eyes and long fins, swimming through the water like fat men going to lunch. Most of the light came from a window in the roof. Under the window, a tall, thin man stood with a wooden table, holding a red fish in one hand and a knife in the other. He looked at me with eyes that told me nothing. I went over to him and looked down at the fish he was holding. "Fungus?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "White fungus." He put the fish on the table. The edge of the fin on its back was white. "White fungus," he said, "isn't so bad. I'll cut it off and this fish will be fine. What can I do for you, mister?" I played with a cigarette and smiled at him. "Like people," I said. "The fish, I mean. They get things wrong with them." He held the fish against the wood and cut away the white edges of its fin. The fish was still. "Some things you can fix and some you can't," he said. He put some purple stuff on the cut edges of the fins and put the fish into a small tank. It swam around peacefully. The thin man dried his hands, sat down, and stared at me. He had been good-looking once. "You interested in fish?" he said. He had the quiet voice of an ex-con. I shook my head. "Not really. It's you I came to see, Mr. Sype." He went on staring at me. Then he said in a soft, tired voice, "Wallace is the name, mister." I blew a smoke ring. "For my job, it has to be Sype." He sat forward and brought his hands together. Strong, hard hands that had done a lot of work in their time. His voice was still soft. "Haven't seen a dick in a year. What's your story?" "Yes," I said. "Listen, Dick, I've got a nice home here. I get no trouble from anybody, and that's how it should be, because I got my pardon from the White House. I've got my fish, and that's enough for me. My wife's got enough money for both of us. All I want is to be left alone." I didn't say anything. I smiled a little and watched him. "Nobody can touch me," he said. "I got my pardon. I just want to be left alone." I shook my head and smiled. "That's the one thing that you can never have until you tell." "Listen," he said softly. "Maybe this is all new to you. Well, I've had almost 20 years of this, and a lot of other people, clever people, have too. They know I've got nothing that doesn't belong to me. Never did. Some other person got it." "The mail clerk," I said. "Sure." "Listen," he said, still softly. "I did my time in prison. I know people aren't going to stop wondering. I know that from time to time somebody is going to come along with some questions. That's okay.
Now, how do I get you to go home again?
I shook my head and stared at the fish in their big silent tanks, thinking about ghosts. Ghosts from a long time ago. A train moving through the darkness. The sound of shooting. A dead clerk on the floor. A man who had kept a secret for 19 years almost kept it. You made one mistake, I said slowly. Remember a guy called Carmady? I could see him thinking, trying to remember. A guy that you knew in Leavenworth prison, I said. You told him you had the pills. I could see he didn't believe me.
I was kidding him,
he said slowly. Maybe, but he didn't think so. He was up here with a friend, a guy called Sunset. Pillar recognized you, and he started thinking about making himself some money. But he drank too much, and he talked in his sleep. A girl heard about it, then another girl and a guy that works with her. Pillar got his feet burnt, and he's dead. Saib stared at me. I went on. We don't know how much, he said, but the girl and her guy are in Olympia. So is Sunset, but he's dead. They killed him. Maybe they know where you are, maybe they don't. But they will sometime. Somebody will always find you. When the cops stop looking and the insurance company isn't interested anymore, there'll always be some crooks who've heard a story about a guy with some pills. And they'll find out what they want to know. They'll take your wife and they'll take you out to the forest for a talk. Now, I've got an honest deal for you.
Who are you?
Saib asked suddenly.
I thought you were a dick, but I'm not so sure now.
Insurance, I said. Here's the deal. 25 grand reward. 5 grand to the girl who gave me the lead. I've done all the work, and I've looked into all the guns. 10 grand to you. You can't get it without me. What do you say?
Fine,
he said.
But I haven't got any pills, Dick.
I had no more to say. I dropped my cigarette on the floor and stood on it. I turned to go. He stood up and held his hand out.
Wait a minute,
he said.
And I'll prove it to you.
He went out of the room. I stared at the fish. So we're not very close. I heard the car engine. I heard the sound of something shutting in a nearby room. Saib came back into the fish room. He had a big gun in his hand. He pointed it at me and said,
I've got pals in this. 6 of them. You're not a dick. Now get out of here and tell your friends I'm ready to shoot their teeth out any day of the week and twice on Sunday.
I didn't move. There was something crazy about the man's dead eyes. Stop acting, I said. I can prove I'm a dick. You're an ex-con and you shouldn't have that gun. Put it down and talk sensibly to me. The car that I had heard was stopping outside the house. I heard feet on the steps, sudden voices. Saib went backwards across the room until he was between the table and a big tank. He grinned at me.
So your friends have found you,
he said.
Take your gun out and drop it on the floor, while you've still got time.
I didn't move. I looked into his eyes and kept very still, He was ready to shoot me for moving a finger. There were feet on the stairs. Some of them belonged to people who didn't want to come up the stairs. 3 people came into the room.